because in the present context, most of the people of Manipur, they do not connect themselves with the Mahabharata period. According to them, according to most of the narratives that has already been set, they do not consider themselves as part of the Mahabharata period. So in the Mahabharata itself and in various other historical texts, there have been mention about Pandav Prince Arjuna having married Manipuri princess Chitrangada some 5,200 years ago. And it is not only the Mahabharata, but also various other texts like the Jaimini Aswamedha and various Ahum chronicles and other records, including even the local oral historical folklores and various other evidences speak volume about the connection of Manipur with Mahabharata.
How does the book offer a fresh perspective on the Northeast? See, the first thing that comes to my mind while I answer this question is that the real problems that have been impacting the Northeast since the British times, they have never been honestly discussed in the academia, in the available research papers on the subject, because they are somehow entrapped in the cloak of political correctness, and they are, of course, they are informed by a certain ideology, the ideological discourse of the left. So the real problems that have been affecting the northeastern region of the country have never been discussed honestly. And certainly there has been an impressive pace of economic development in the Northeast in terms of infrastructure, in terms of trade and business, etc., since 2014. But then we also have some existential dangers in this region of the country. So what about those existential dangers that that the people of the Northeast have been facing since the time the missionaries had set their foot in this region of the country? Not everything can be seen and analyzed from the economic perspective alone, because economics alone cannot save the culture and civilization of a people.
I would highly recommend people to look up the letter. It's in public domain. The Gorkha sent, Nikhil Gorkha Parishangho sent to the JP Nadda ji on June 4th, 2023. They claim that Gorkhas had been wiped out from large parts of the district, basically displaced. So this is wrong to claim that only it's an ethnic conflict and ethnic people are being affected. So these root cause issues, the legislations rooted in colonial policy, they are not being addressed at all. Now, on this background, now I will come to the current situation. The current situation is that the society is hobbling. The Manipuri society is struggling a lot because the highways and the access to Manipur are being blocked. So for ordinary people, most of them have to travel via airway. And unfortunately, there has been repeated complaints of predatory pricing in airlines regarding Imphal. So it is making them traveling in and out of Imphal Valley very difficult. Any form of recovery or business which deals with manufacturing or delivery of goods and products, it's impossible. Already there were a lot of problems regarding bad roads, not being all weather in H37. Now coupled with the extortion and open license of terrorism, with sophisticated weapons like gas-powered snipers, machine guns, these things being used. It's a terrible situation.
Today we'll discuss on the latest thought-provoking work, the Manipur Conundrum, History, Exodus and Conversion, authored by Manoshi Sinha, Dr. Ankita Dutta, and Vladimir Adityanath. We are especially delighted to have the authors with us today, along with our all esteemed guests, my colleagues and participants who have gathered to engage in this vital conversation on Manipur, its past, its present, and what the future may hold. Now, this book raises urgent and pertinent questions. Today, the authors will take us through a deeply researched journey that uncovers how demographic warfare and civilizational attacks are endangering the indigenous identity of Manipur. The question that echoes through every chapter is stark. Will the sons and daughters of Manipur ever feel safe again in their own land? So, as we begin this conversation, I welcome you all once again. It's my honor and welcome and introduce the three distinguished authors who have joined us today. Manoshi Sinha. She's a historian, best-selling author, and founder of My India, My Glory, a digital platform dedicated to Indian history and heritage. With over 2 decades of experience in field research across historical sites and ancient temples, she has authored several acclaimed works, including Saffron Swords and Reclaiming Mathura. She is also a certified astronumerologist and Vastu consultant, recognized with titles such as Jyotish Bhaskar and Maharshi Jamini Award. Next with us, we have Dr. Ankita Dutta. Well, I'm very happy to see you, ma'am, my ex-colleague who holds a PhD from JNU on the Vaishnavite movement in Assam. She has taught at various institutions and worked extensively on Northeast India's indigenous communities, contributing to research projects, academic programs, and the IPS division of the Ministry of Education. She writes regularly in multiple languages on cultural and civilizational themes of region. And lastly, we have Vladimir Adityanath, who is a writer, activist, and political observer with a focus on indigenous rights and civilization issues in Northeast India. An engineer by training, he has authored several ground reports and articles highlighting religious persecution, demographic shifts, and cultural erosion in regions like Manipur, Meghalaya, and Bengal. He is actively engaged in humanitarian efforts supporting indigenous victims of the uh, one second. Uh, he has been actively engaged in humanitarian efforts supporting indigenous victims of conflict. So, welcome you all. My first question is to Manushi ma'am. Ma'am, what is the historical connection between Manipur and the Mahabharata, and what controversies have emerged around it in recent times? Ma'am, please.
Pranam to everyone. First of all, on behalf of my co-authors, Dr. Ankita Dutta and Vladimir Adityanath, I'd like to thank Indus University for inviting us for a discussion on our latest book, The Manipur Conundrum. And thanks for our introduction as well. So what is the connection of Mahabharata with Manipur? So this question raises a lot of conflicts to exactly mean, because in the present context, most of the people of Manipur, they do not connect themselves with the Mahabharata period. According to them, according to most of the narratives that has already been set, they do not consider themselves as part of the Mahabharata period. So in the Mahabharata itself and in various other historical texts, there have been mention about Pandav Prince Arjuna having married Manipuri princess Chitrangada some 5,200 years ago. And it is not only the Mahabharata, but also various other texts like the Jaimini Aswamedha and various Ahum chronicles and other records, including even the local oral historical folklores and various other evidences speak volume about the connection of Manipur with Mahabharata. Now, why are there too much of controversy pertaining to this connection. This is because, according to the set narrative, there was a Vaishnavite saint called Santadas Adhikari who came from Bengal, and he preached Vaishnavism in Manipur. Manipuris have been already Hindus. There is mention in the Mahabharata about Raja Prabhanjan, one of the oldest ancestors of Princess Chitrangada. He was a worshipper of Shiva. He was childless for many years. So he did severe penance and invoked Shiva. Shiva blessed him with a child. And he also blessed him that from thenceforth, every generation will have a male child, will have a child. So after Prabhanjan, every generation in Manipur, they started having a male child. And only Chitravahan, the contemporary king of during the ruler during the Mahabharata period, Raja Chitravahan, he was blessed with a daughter. Her name was Chitrangada. And because she was a daughter and she has to continue with the lineage and she has to be the ruler of Manipur after him, he anointed her as a Putrika, meaning if anything happens to him, then she would be the ruler of Manipur after his death. And after she gets married, the first male child would continue the lineage of Manipur. That first male child would become the king of Manipur. So he also thought of setting the terms and conditions with any prince who would be interested to marry Chitrangada. So during Arjuna's exile, he happened to visit so many kingdoms across the country. He visited the northeast as well. Before he married Chitrangada, he married Naga princess Ullupi. And thereafter, he set foot in Manipur. And there, he was very enchanted by the beauty of Chitrangada because she was brought up as a warrior. Because in the future, she has to look after the affairs of the kingdom of Manipur, and she was raised as a warrior. And she was an expert hunter. Even Arjuna encountered Chitrangada in the forest while she was on a hunting expedition. So that marriage took place, and he introduced himself as the son of Pandu. And Chitravahan agreed on one condition that after the son would be born, then only he can take away Chitrangada along with him, and that son would become the king of Manipur. Arjuna agreed. He stayed for some few months, and then he went to other parts of the country. A son was born to them who was named Babrubahan. And after that, there are very little details about how Babrubahan was taken care of, especially in Vedvyasa's Mahabharata. But there is one disciple of Vedvyasa. Vedvyasa had 5 key disciples, 5 shishyas. One was Jaimini. Jaimini also documented some portions of the Mahabharata as was narrated to him by Vedvyasa. And according to Jaimini's version of Mahabharata, especially the Jaimini Aswamedha, there are details about how Babrubahan was brought up, how Manipur looked. Manipur, according to Jaimini Aswamedha, Manipur is known as the second Vaikuntha. They were full of natural, beautiful landscapes, full of temples, and the whole kingdom looked divine. It looked like a celestial kingdom, and that's why it is called as the second Vaikuntha. And according to the Jaimini Aswamedha, both Ullupi and Chitrangada together, they brought up Babrubahan. So then after a gap of several years, then we come to the Aswamedha period, when after the Mahabharata war, the Aswamedha horse travels to various kingdoms across the country. And the Aswamedha horse, before it enters Manipur, it enters Burma. Burma was then known as Rakaspura. So there, the king of Rakaspura, Arjuna had a conflict, defeated the king of Rakaspura. And after that, the Aswamedha horse entered Manipur. Babruvahan at once recognized his father. He did not want to enter into a conflict. He did not want to involve in battle against his father. But his father wanted him to exhibit his Kshatriya qualities. He wanted him to be involved in the battle, to catch the Aswamedha horse. And Ulupi was there at that time. She was present there, and she also asked Babruvahana to be involved in the battle. And the battle took place. The battle was almost like a stalemate because neither party won, and both of them fell unconscious. Babruvahan gained consciousness after some time, but Arjuna did not regain his consciousness. And Chitrangada came to the battlefield, and she was cursing Ulupi that if he doesn't come back to life, then she would end up giving up her life in the battlefield itself. And thereafter, using a Nagamani, Ulupi uses the Nagamani to regain Arjuna's consciousness. So all of these are described in the Jaimini Aswamedha. So, and that proves the point, because Manipur in the Jaimini Aswamedha is considered a neighboring kingdom of Rakaspura. Rakaspura is today's Burma. So after Rakaspura, the Aswamedha horse enters Manipur, and before Rakaspura, the Aswamedha horse enters Rangpura, which was ruled by Rani Pramila. Many of today's historians and scholars, they consider the Rangpura, that is Pramila Desh, as today's Meghalaya. And still there is mention in Raja Tarangini about the Stree Rajya in the northeastern part of the country, following the matrilinear system, because there were mostly women, and the ruler was a woman. And that Stree Rajya finds mention in the Mahabharata. So the scholars, today's historians and scholars, they consider the Meghalaya to be the Pramila Desh mentioned in the Mahabharata and the Jaimini Aswamedha. So all of these three kingdoms together, the Rakaspura, Manipur, and Pramila Desh, are considered neighboring kingdoms. So there is again a question raised by many contemporary scholars as well as the mainstream people, that Manipura mentioned in the Mahabharata is actually the Manipura, a small locality in today's Kendrapara district of Orissa. But going by the historical evidences, there is no connection with Manipura of Kendrapara district of Orissa and the Manipura of Manipur, that is in the northeast. There is cultural affinity, there is cultural continuity of the traditions, the rituals that have been followed since millennia, since the last 5,000 years, that is still continuing in Manipur. But in the Manipura locality, which is a very small region in Kendrapara district of Orissa, there is no cultural affinity. There is no living traditions from the Mahabharata period. So I am a Vishnupriya Manipuri. The Vishnupriya Manipuris and the Meiteis worship a pantheon of ancestral deities who are mostly the descendants of Arjuna and Chitrangada. Suppose my ancestor, my Kula Devata is Apappa, who is 16th generation from Chitrangada and Arjuna. So this is a living tradition that has the legacy which has been continuing since the last 5,000 years. And in Manipur of the northeast, not in Manipur of Orissa. So going by so many such facts, it can be confirmed, it is attested, it is proven that the Manipur in the Manipur of the northeast has a connection with the Mahabharata period.
So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So I personally also had this doubt regarding that exact location of Manipur, because many a times we hear that it is from a region from Orissa, and also we have a separate.
There is this Alexandrian geographer called Ptolemy who has also described about Manipur being a part of the northeast. And he has mentioned Manipur as a part of the Kale kingdom. Kale kingdom comprised parts of Manipur, Burma, and also parts of China, which was part of Akhand Bharat. So again, that proves that Manipur was in the northeast. Manipur is in the northeast. And then Ahum chronicles, especially the Tungphungya Buranji, also finds description about the kings of Manipur being descendants of Arjuna and Chitrangada. Raja Jai Singha, he is also known as Bhagya Chandra. He entered into there were several battles between the Burmese and the Manipuris. So in one of the battles, he had to seek refuge in the Ahum kingdom in Kachar. And he gave his daughter Kuranga Nayini in marriage with the then Ahum king. Then he introduced himself as a descendant of Babru Bahana. So again, that sets the narrative right, that Manipur of the Northeast has a connection with the Mahabharata period.
Ma'am, I have one personal question in this context. Since this narrative is connected with Arjuna and Chitrangada's marriage, and the area is Manipur. In the next story, we find Arjuna's Ulupi's marriage, and Ulupi was a Naga princess. So, is the Northeast Nagaland also the part of? Was I'm not sure. I'm just asking.
Yeah. Because see, there are so many. There are also historical evidences about Ulupi being from Nagaland. So she was a Naga princess, and she was also married to Arjuna, and the Jaimini Aswamedha describing both Ulupi and Chitrangada bringing up Babruvahana together. That mentions that they should be neighbors. If they had not been neighbors, then they would not have brought up Babruvahana together. And Ulupi used to visit her own kingdom also.
Okay.
Look after her son. So
Okay.
if distance would have been very far, then it would not have been possible for Ulupi to visit Manipur often and also take care of Babrubahan.
Thank you, ma'am. So my next question is to Ankita, ma'am. Hope you are doing well. She is my ex-colleague, and once we used to work together at Center for Indic Studies. So, ma'am, my question is, how does the book offer a fresh perspective on Manipur and the Northeast, particularly in the light of the recent violence and unrest in this region?
Right. First of all, Namaste, Rajabhishek ji, and all the respective members of the Center for Indic Studies at Indus University. We are extremely grateful to all of you for hosting the session today and having us all on this platform. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining the podcast, and thanks to both my co-authors today. Okay, so how does the book offer a fresh perspective on the Northeast? See, the first thing that comes to my mind while I answer this question is that the real problems that have been impacting the Northeast since the British times, they have never been honestly discussed in the academia, in the available research papers on the subject, because they are somehow entrapped in the cloak of political correctness. And they are, of course, they are informed by a certain ideology, the ideological discourse of the left. So the real problems that have been affecting the northeastern region of the country have never been discussed honestly. And certainly there has been an impressive pace of economic development in the Northeast in terms of infrastructure, in terms of trade and business, etc., since 2014. But then we also have some existential dangers in this region of the country. So what about those existential dangers that that the people of the Northeast have been facing since the time the missionaries had set their foot in this region of the country. Not everything can be seen and analyzed from the economic perspective alone, because economics alone cannot save the culture and civilization of a people. Infrastructure or business is simply not enough alone to save the culture and civilization of a people from anti-national, from adharmic forces. And if a culture is lost, then we lose everything. If a culture is lost, then everything is lost. So this is the bitter reality that tried uh, we have tried in our own humble way to document in our book, uh, especially in the context of the Manipur violence and the history and culture of Manipur and its problems, by looking beyond the binary framework of ethnicity and ethnic identity. And in doing so, we are no way trying to deny the importance of a region's economic development. But all we want to say is that overemphasis on economics at the cost of ignoring cultural and civilizational problems is dangerous for a region, is dangerous for a nation. And also to establish a narrative, among the public that economic and material development alone can help stem the tide of religious terrorism and religious conversions is not justified, considering the ground reality of the Northeast. Because there are certain inherent problems in the monotheistic Abrahamic religions, which do not let them coexist in any society, and they cannot coexist. So we have history is a proof of that. So if we see whichever corner of the world these cults have invaded, the society there has been devastated by some of the worst episodes of violence till date. We have so many examples across the world. And this never ending cycle of terror and violence has had an irreversible impact on the cultures and civilizations of people across the world. And we have tried to understand the Northeast. We have tried to document the Northeast in our book from this perspective. And especially with reference to the violence in Manipur that has been continuing since the 3rd of May, 2023. That has, of course, led to the loss of innumerable lives and properties. Not just that, it has left a deep impact on the long cherished multicultural social fabric of Manipur. And we have also tried to explain how the divisive colonial era administrative and institutional policies, short-sighted laws on land based on ethnicity that were introduced by the post-colonial governments after independence, how they produced long-term ramifications on the state's inter-ethnic and demographic and religious equations. So the majority Hindu community, they are not able to buy land in their own state in a particular area of that state. So how did it happen? How it all began? So we have documented it all. The partition of India of 1947, the rise of the military regime in the 1960s in Burma, and the Bangladesh War of 1971. How these events together contributed to the problem of illegal immigration into Manipur. And by illegal immigration into Manipur, I do not simply mean to say illegal immigration is happening from only Bangladesh, but it is also happening from other countries as well. And how it has had uh, own demographic and political bearings on the society and politics, on not just the society and politics of Manipur, but also the entire Northeast, and how these problems were continuously neglected by the successive state and central governments. And this prolonged neglect of this growing demographic and religious changes by the successive governments at both the center and the state, uh, it they all contributed in the making of the violence of May 3, 2023, because Manipur was deliberately, it was intentionally left susceptible to the adverse spillover effects of political instability in neighboring Myanmar by the successive political dispensations. So as a result, the exclusive aspirations of separatism, of separate nationhood of a certain section of the people, they were increasingly traded off for short-term political gains. Uh, I think that's all I have to say. Rick can continue from here.
Um,
So,
Thank you, ma'am. So my next question, I'm audible, right? Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Okay.
audible.
So my next question is to Adityanath, sir. Sir, what is the current situation in Manipur according to you, and how has the conflict evolved in recent months?
Okay, when we talk about the current situation in Manipur, about the current situation, the most and first and most important thing is that we have to see what the situation was before, whether it was ideal or not, and what are the objectives we are following. Now, the major problem is that we are defining the problem statement wrong. We are telling that first let us get peace, and that is the end game. Getting peace in Manipur is the end game. But that is not the real issue. The problems, the first thing is that violence has repeatedly flared in Manipur whenever there has been any attempts from the state government to change legislations which are rooted in colonial divide and rule policy, like the 1960 Manipur Land Revenue and Land Reform Act, then the 1971 District Councils Act, which basically gives them a separate administration by itself, even gives them taxation powers, district councils in some areas. And these have been horribly abused, these acts, to persecute people without having an ST status. Then the SC/ST Amendment Act. So we have to, before that, we have to understand the demand for ST what it is. The demand for ST was a desperate cry because the Manipuris actually thought that it will never, these things will never happen. Nobody will listen to them. So they tried to find a way which would not affect others, which will be mostly with them getting ST, so that giving ST would level the playing field for them to a certain extent. So this was their attempt. So on this background, when they demanded ST, the problem began. Also, there are some pretty wrong narratives told in the media. The demand of ST was not started recently. It was started STDCM, a body started in 2013. So this was over a decade. After over a decade of hearing, the court actually told the state government that the documents are good enough. Why are you not taking action? So that verdict was used as a pretext to launch what I would call is a final blow to cleanse Manipuri people along with many other people. Also, this one thing they are telling Kuki Meiteis this thing. I would highly recommend people to look up the letter. It's in public domain. The Gorkha sent, Nikhil Gorkha Porishangho sent to the JP Nadda ji on June 4th, 2023. They claim that Gorkhas had been wiped out from large parts of the district, basically displaced. So this is wrong to claim that only it's an ethnic conflict and ethnic people are being affected. So these root cause issues, the legislations rooted in colonial policy, they are not being addressed at all. Now, on this background, now I will come to the current situation. The current situation is that the society is hobbling. The Manipuri society is struggling a lot because the highways and the access to Manipur are being blocked. So most for ordinary people, most of them have to travel via airway. And unfortunately, there has been repeated complaints of predatory pricing in airlines regarding Imphal. So it is making them traveling in and out of Imphal Valley very difficult. Any form of recovery or business which deals with manufacturing or delivery of goods and products, It's impossible. Already there were a lot of problems regarding bad roads, not being all weather in H-37. Now, coupled with the extortion and open license of terrorism, with sophisticated weapons like gas-powered snipers, machine guns, these things being used, it's a terrible situation. So, this is one major problem. Second, what we see which has improved is that at least the people have shown a lot of guts and courage. They have prepared certain things, ideas, what to do, some guidelines, and they are basic necessities, houses like those things, putting a basic roof. Although the conditions in not many of these so-called relief camps is very bad, but it is slowly, very gradually improving. Major other problem is that Manipur's food situation was already not that good. Entire Northeast, if you do a study, you will see that agricultural productivity has not increased as compared in a comparable rate with rest of Bharat. You will not see that this region, the agricultural productivity has not increased that much. There has been a lot of reason, I won't go into it, but in this situation, at least what NGOs and uh, no, independent other organizations of experts doing surveys, what they tell is around 10,000 hectares are not being able to be cultivated because of long range sniper and rifle fire from the hills. So, this kind of the buffer zone thing which has been seen, the containment measure, this is failing because there is a homogeneous demography along a very porous border. And this is a tried and failed policy. This failed in the Singhasan Hills along the Karbi clashes during Kuki Karbi clashes. That cost tens of thousands of lives, displaced victims, horrible atrocities. This is a tried and failed policy in Dima Hasao when the Mar, which is also a Janajati which calls itself Kuki. Again, there is no real term for Kuki. These are all parts of language based identity politics, mostly devised with idea of the church. So that also failed. So this tried and failed policy of buffer zone, it is again being implemented. And as usual, this is allowing small, heavily armed groups with very good military training to do hit and run attacks at times and places of their choosing and then disappear into an area where they enjoy huge amount of local support, where there is a lack of informants, where the area is very remote. So in this situation, there is a distinct difference between the success and the extent of action against armed groups in the Imphal Valley and the other part of Manipur. This is also creating a lot of discontent. And people with vested interests, particularly people funded by foreign agents with vested interests, they are trying to fuel this attitude to bring the anti-national sentiments. They are trying to fan the flames of anti-national sentiments, and lot of groups with Marxist ideology who did not actually stand up. Most of them did not stand up during the worst phase of violence. But now they're trying to find recruitments to recruit gullible youth, to extort people, further complicating the situation. So, in a nutshell, I would say this is the situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for highlighting so much important areas to be considered. So I'll come back to Manoshi ma'am again. So, ma'am, can you please highlight who are the Meiteis Manipuris and the Vishnupriya Manipuris, and what are the historical and contemporary conflicts involving these communities? And also, how do you view the future of inter-community relations in Manipur in light of these tensions?
So the first question itself, I have described a little bit about the historical connection, the historical perspective pertaining to Manipur's connection with the Mahabharata. And Arjun and Chitrangada's son was Babrubahan. Babrubahan married Savitri. And Babrubahan and Savitri's child was Dattamani. Dattamani was married to Jutheswari. Their son was Atya Guru. Atya Guru was married to Sabirai Panthoibi, then Leisang Khombi, Changing Khombi, Pramila, and Urmila. So Atya Guru through Sabirai Panthoibi had two children. The eldest one is Sanamahi, which you must have heard about the Sanamahism. So he's Sanamahi, the eldest son of Atiya Guru and Sabirai Panthobi, and their youngest son, he was Pakhamba. And they also, Atiya Guru had 4 more sons through Promila Mangang, through Urmila Luang, through Leisang Kombi is Angom, and through Changking Kombi is Moirang. So 6 children. So out of the 6 children, the eldest one was Sanamahi and the youngest was Pakhamba. So when Atiya Guru thought of leaving everything and going to the forest, he thought that one of his sons should be the king of Manipur. So he called his children and he said that whoever would come back visiting or exploring the world, whoever would come back first would be made the king of Manipur. This is a similar story that we find in the Puranas, Shiva Purana, where Ganesha and Kartik, they expressed their intention of getting married, and Shiva and Parvati, they say that both of them should go and explore the world, and whoever would come back first would get married. And so Kartikeya, he went with the peacock, and Ganesha, he remained. He did not go. Instead, he circumambulated Shiva and Parvati and said that his world, his parents were his world. And so, seeing his wisdom, Shiva and Parvati got Ganesha married. So there is a similar story in this story of Manipur as well. So out of the 6 children, all of the Sanamahi and all the children, they immediately set out to explore the world. The youngest son, that is Kanthok Kansil, he stayed back. What he did when his father was resting in the bed, he circumambulated his father and said that his world is his father. His father is his world. And his father was very much satisfied with his wisdom, and he made Kanthok Kansil, that is, he is also known as Pakhamba, he made him the king of Manipur. So afterwards, all the other sons of Atiya Guru, they came one after another, and they were very angry when they found Pakhamba being made the king of Manipur. Sanamahi was about to strike his younger brother when Atiya Guru stopped him. And he blessed him that thenceforth he would be worshipped in every home of Manipur. So he is considered as a household deity since then. So since that very time, Sanamahi has been worshipped in Manipur as a household deity. So both the Meiteis and the Bishnupriya Manipuris, they worship Sanamahi today, and there is a separate sect has been created in the name of Sanamahism, that is the followers of Sanamahi, the devotees of Sanamahi. The Sanamahi is actually the son of Atiya Guru, that is the 5th in generation from Arjuna and Chitrangada. And the other sons, they also returned, and few of the sons enraged, they left the kingdom to look for greener pastures, and Kanthok Kansil Pakhamba, he started ruling the kingdom of Manipur. Later on, Kanthok Kansil's son was Kumal. Kumal, he is also known as Apokpa, the 6th generation from Arjuna and Chitrangada. So what he did after he became the king of Manipur, he thought that his uncles, that is the Angom, Luang, Mangang, who have been deprived of a part of the kingdom of Manipur, he thought he should divide his kingdom into 5 principalities, and each of the uncles should also get a share in the kingdom. So he divided his kingdom into 5 parts in the name of the uncles, that is Moirang, Angom, Mangang, Luang. And Sanamahi, he did not take any share because he was satisfied with the blessings of his father. So he did not get married, and from thenceforth, he has been worshipped as a household deity. So Kumal became the king of the Kumal kingdom, and Kumal's descendants are today known as the Bishnupriya Manipuris. So I am myself a Bishnupriya Manipuri, so I trace my ancestry to Kumal. And the Mangangs, the descendants of the Mangangs are known as Meiteis. And as you know, even the Kauravas and the Pandavas, just for power, for the kingdom, they fought the war. So it happens with, it has happened with many more kingdoms where there are fights, conflicts among the brothers for the throne. So similarly, here also, though there are 5 principalities, over a period of time, the Mangangs emerged the most powerful. For some period, say for around 2000 years, the Kumals were very powerful because the eldest Kula Devata, that is Pakhamba, he remained with the Kumals. As long as the Kula Devata remained with the Kumals were very powerful. So there was a time when the Kula Devata Pakhamba in the Kumal descendant, he asked him to offer him 100 live beings as sacrifice. And the Kumal king, he restrained himself from offering such. And enraged, Pakhamba, the Kuladevata, he left the Kumals and he went to the Mangang king. He asked the Mangang king to offer him 100 animals, so live beings, living beings. And the Mangang king agreed. And what he did, he offered 100 worms that are found in cow dung. And that those worms are also living beings. And that way, Kuladevata, Pakhamba stayed to the Mangangs, and the Mangangs since then, they emerged powerful. And all the other descendants of the other kings, Mangang, Luang, Moirang, they all became less powerful over a period of time. And the Meiteis, they started dominating the landscape of Manipur. And till today, the Meiteis have been powerful compared to the other clans, compared to the other Manipuri clans. So when we consider the Meiteis, even in numerical strength, even they are not that powerful in numerical strength. In today's context, if we consider Manipur, then they comprise only a part of the population of Manipur. And even because of the latest conflict since the past 2+ years, most of the Manipuris, they are living in camps, refugee camps. And you see in Kashmir, what happened in 1990, thousands of Kashmiris are still staying in refugee camps. Whoever could go out of Kashmir and they settled, they went out and stayed in not only Bharat, but other parts of the country, other parts of the world, and they are doing well. But whoever has stayed back in refugee camps, they're still suffering. So even in Manipur also, the conditions since the last 2 years, most of the Manipuris, they have lost their homes, their land, and they're still living in refugee camps. So are there any chances of this Manipuris going back to their homes? Is there any possibility? Only the future can tell us. So these Mangangs are the Meiteis, and the Bishnupriya Manipuris are the Kumals. Even the Bishnupriya Manipuris are facing an identity crisis because they are very few in number, altogether comprising of 7 lakhs all across the world. So mainly confined in the entire Northeast and various cities across the world. And why are they confined in parts of the Northeast instead of Manipur? So during this Burmese aggression, there have been conflicts between Manipur and Burma for quite some time. And during the 18th century, due to brutalities of the Burmese, most of the Manipuris, both the Meiteis and the Bishnupriyas, they faced exodus, and they settled in areas surrounding Manipur, that is in Tripura, in Assam, in Meghalaya, Nagaland, in all other parts of the Northeast, neighboring areas of the Manipur. So they are still there. Even my ancestors, they faced exodus from Manipur in the 18th century, and they are settled down in Kachar district, the surrounding area near the Jiribam area of Manipur, border area of Manipur. And see, we have not, problem that the exodus that took place in the 18th century is not yet solved. And in the independent India, again, the exodus has happened with the Manipuris. And so so you have asked about who the Bishnupriyas are, who the Meiteis are. So this is the history of both the communities.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So my next question is for Ankita Dutta, ma'am. Ma'am, how does your book explore the role of drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and the history of insurgency in the Northeast, particularly if we see in the context of this today's ongoing Manipur conflict, areas of drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and history of insurgency?
Right. Yeah, good question. So yeah, the violence. So if we look into the history of the violence in Manipur that began in the summer of 2023, of course, it coincided with the rising tide of illegal immigrants, uh, especially in the border districts of Manipur, and several insidious economic activities that are still, in fact, going on in the state, such mainly narco-terrorism, that is drugs trade, poppy plantations, proliferation of small arms, and human trafficking also. And as the new settler population of illegal immigrants, as they began acquiring enormous money and muscle power in society and politics, both tensions began. They also began their own political agenda in the name of a greater homeland, which is known by various names. So resultantly, conflict between the indigenous people of Manipur and the ever expanding population of these illegal immigrants was something which was evident. And if we look into the bitter stories of different clashes that have rocked uh, India's northeast, whether it be Assam, whether it is Mizoram, Tripura, and our book covers all these clashes in detail. There is one chapter in the second section of the book which talks about the different clashes in Assam's Karbi Anglong district, in Dima Hasao district, in Haflong, in Tripura, in Mizoram. And this is, I think, the chapter 12 of the second part of the book. And for any reader will be able to understand how these clashes have been instigated in the first place by one particular community. And this one particular community, they have been responsible for orchestrating numerous violent activities in the Northeast. They have killed the native people of Assam, Tripura, Mizoram, and destroyed their temples. And now they are targeting Manipur. And if we see, these clashes they revolve around a similar trajectory that is quite inherent to Abrahamic religions, and particularly an expansionist brand of I would say religion centric identity politics. So the ongoing conflict in Manipur, it must be read in the larger canvas of an expansionist religious cult that thrives on the politics of binaries, hatred, and violence. And even the official statements that have been issued from time to time by the government of India, by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs and the NIA, National Investigation Agency, they have even reaffirmed the involvement of foreign players in the Manipur violence. So, yeah, coming to your second question, history of insurgency in the Northeast, the second section of the book looks into the historical and socio-political reasons behind the insurgency in the Northeast, of course, with a special focus on Manipur, because Manipur has had to bear the brunt of militancy at different periods of time in history. But if we look into the available literature on the subject, we would see how the tendency in the academia uh, has always been to analyze this conflict from the ethnic perspective, from the tribal lens. Now, this is not the complete story, and it has failed to provide a sound understanding of the historical origins of the problem of insurgency in the Northeast and its subsequent cultural and civilizational impacts upon the society. The post-independent governments at the center, as I mentioned in the beginning, they failed to address the problem in the initial stages. And history repeated itself again uh, on the 3rd of May 2023, when the Indian state's abject failure was visible during the violence in Manipur. And the implications of this violence are going to be felt for a long time, not just in Manipur, but across the Northeast. The violence poses an unparalleled threat. It poses an unparalleled threat to the idea and foundations of a multicultural Northeast, of a multicultural Manipur. But the most important question is how and why did the violence begin in the first place? So who instigated it? I mean, who were the real perpetrators? Was it pre-planned? And why could the government not bring the situation effectively under control? More than a year had passed, and even then, the government could not bring the situation under control effectively. So we have tried to address all these questions in both the second and the third sections of the book. And insurgency in Manipur has been discussed in the backdrop of the state's sensitive, because it is a border state. So we have discussed the problem of insurgency in Manipur in the backdrop of its sensitive geostrategic locations. So as Manushi ji was speaking about the Burmese invasions, the second section of the book, uh, it begins from the Burmese invasions, in fact. And then it goes to dwell upon the violence that has been committed by people from Burma at different periods of time in history. So, like we all know about the Islamic invasions and the brutality of the Islamic invasions, right? But the the same brutality, perhaps even more, the Burmese invasions were equally brutal. In fact, maybe far more brutal. When we compare them to the Islamic invasions, but people still do not know about it. People outside the Northeast, they still do not know about it. How the Burmese invasions left a deep psychological and long-term impact, long-term cultural, social, and psychological impact on the psyche of the people in the Northeast. Temples were destroyed, women were raped, men were killed, and everything. There was destruction everywhere. So we have dealt uh, with the Burmese invasions, and then we go to the insurgency part. And in this context, I would like to make it clear to the audience that the focus is not merely on Manipur, uh, but the other states of the Northeast as well, because they have also been equally, they have been the victims of such violence that have been committed by people from Burma numerous times in the past. And then we go to the post-independence era in the second section of the book that has been covered with respect to Manipur specifically, the loss of the historic Kabau Valley to Myanmar, how Manipur lost its consequences, and the rise of insurgency in the post-independent era. And also, we have tried to deal with questions like the ever-increasing socio-political clout of the church in the Manipuri society, illegal immigration, the role of Chinese communism in the insurgency, the problem of drugs or narco-terrorism. They all have been discussed in detail. Also, major issues which are being debated currently, such as cookie militancy. What is the actual meaning of a separate administration? Who are these people who want separate administration, and why do they want it? So all of these have been analyzed in detail. There is also an entire chapter in the book on More. More, for those of you who might not be aware, More is a border town in Manipur. It once used to be a thriving multicultural border trading town of Manipur. There used to live a significant section of Tamil Hindus in More, besides Punjabis, Marwaris, Sikhs, Nagas, and Meiteis. But all these people, they have been thrown out of More in different phases of genocide and ethnic cleansing, beginning from the 1980s. So we have documented all of these in the chapter on More, how these people were thrown out from More, and the same thing is happening in different other places of Manipur now. And so this is something that is very important, I believe, for all of us to read and understand as to what the future holds for us if we do not wake up now. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No. Thank you, ma'am. I'll summarize at last. My last question is to Adityanath, sir. Sir, according to you, what are the possible solutions to the ongoing conflict in Manipur? I mean, how is the government currently responding, and what are the additional steps that you think can be taken to ensure the lasting peace and stability in this region?
First thing we have to see, it's not a conflict, it's a civilizational crisis which is going on. So whenever we are going for a civilizational crisis, we have to make sure that it is the responsibility of the entire society. Unfortunately, no government alone can solve this crisis. It has reached at such a point. Even if the government tries its maximum effort, it won't work. Why? Because we have to first understand Manipur is in a geopolitical hotspot. Our Act East policy, our Kaladan projects, our expansion, communication, the More which Ankita ji was mentioning, Act East goes through More, Kaladan project goes through Mizoram. So these kind of things are very much related, very close by to Manipur. And both superpowers, China and USA, they are attempting to create a second Pakistan-like barrier to prevent us from going there. So first thing we have to understand that this foreign interference, foreign involvement, foreign overt and covert support, sometimes in the name of church, sometimes in the name of ethnicity, will continue. The biggest problem with the church is as an institution, it's a geopolitical tool of the West for pushing agenda. And the church, you will see an overt interest of the church, unlike the West, to control and dominate local politics and pursue policies which are often against the interests of Bharat as a nation. You can see that in Nagaland during FISO, Naga National Council, how it was subverted and other things it went. You can see in other states also. And the biggest giveaway is that the violence in Northeast did not rise up all at one time. It started step by step, as if someone is preparing the ground and then there is fire flaring up. This pattern is clearly visible. So this is one thing. Regarding government, first thing, central government and we as a society have to address these four legislations. 1960 Manipur Land Revenue and Land Reforms Act. Second thing is Article 371C with the District Councils Act. Third thing, SC/ST Amendment Act 2002. And fourth thing, the Imphal High Court Amendment. I'm forgetting the number exactly in 2022, which allows all STs to be indigenous. Now, also one more thing. What Ankita ji and Manoshi ji were talking about, we followed the pattern because even when there was civil war in Burma, 1962, the horrible war of 1948, illegal immigration was there, but India was not the most popular destination. India became the most popular destination after the horrendous amendment of 2002 SC/ST Act, which allowed any Kuki tribes arbitrarily to basically claim to be indigenous people or ST. Now, this allowed people to claim common language which can be easily learned, claim common lineage, and for foreigners and illegal immigrants to enter through a porous border and claim benefits. So after this, immediately from less than 10%, over 50% of the displaced people from Burma started entering Bharat. So this is also a major crisis point. So these reforms at the government level have to be solved. Also, when we look into Manipur, what we see is that there has been a systematic attack on the Manipuri identity and its cultural and civilizational values. A major chapter in Manipur merely covers our book, the victim testimonies. What happened during the last 20 years, 30 years? What happened in Churachandpur? What happened in More? Because what we see is that schools like Young Learners, Ray-Ban, Saltbrook, discriminating against children for their faith and culture, results subverting their results and academic prowess, subverting their language, not teaching Meiteilon until they were in class 9, so that they find it very difficult to write their board exams. Then, as usual, the usual tactics of what I would say at a very simple case is that ethnicity is being used as the front, and foreign powers and the church are the ones firing behind under the cover of it, putting it straight. So in this matter, what we see is that so also in Northeast you will see it is very organized. Like if you go in Churachandpur, you will find a very good order that a Meitei Christian is higher than a Meitei non-Christian. A Kuki Christian is higher than a Meitei Christian. So any form of religious discrimination accommodates for identity politics. And this immediately rules out anything of it being natural. So there is nothing natural about it. It's foreign pushed with backings from Mizoram, and this identity politics. Second thing is that government has to do a long campaign. Kuki Chin Mizao, Kuki Chin or Kuki. These forms, these identities are made by grouping different numbers of South Central Tibeto-Burman language families. These are similar, not same languages. There's a big difference. They will sometimes group 20, form Kuki. Say 20, I'm just saying for argument's sake. Sometimes they will group 30, call it Kuki Chin. Sometimes they will group all 50, call Kuki Chin Mizo, depending upon what objective they are going for. And this entire backing comes relatively recent. You can trace the terms like they are trying to avoid identity politics by using terms like Zomi and other things, basically meaning generic terms like mountain people. These terms come from 1953 Burma. So we are seeing an artificial identity being built up, which is being formed as a justification for doing mass murder, cleansing, destruction of native culture, and taking land. This has to be countered. Thought leadership. Unfortunately, the thought leadership, there Allama Iqbal is already there. P.S. Haukip. He wrote a book called Zalingam. And there he uses terms like Lebensraum for Kuki Chin Mizo language speakers. So he makes it very clear that this nation will be built on ethnicity and obviously the church politics, and other people, human rights or dignity of living shall not be considered. So this narrative has to be countered very heavily and decisive action has to be taken. Third thing is that educational campaign, the educational system of Manipur has to be reformed. The state education is in shambles and the native history is not taught properly. So people are extremely vulnerable to conversion and deracination. The young generation, the deracination, during the crisis, we used to observe the first 3 or 4 months, the older and younger people would simply search for books, search for contents, search for a non-biased or ideologically driven platform from where they can get to know who they are. So these educational reforms also has to be done. So this cannot be done in a short term, medium term thing. There has to be short term policies like opening highways, like going for gun collections from all these things, doing decisive military operations, sealing the border as much as possible, maybe creating a no-go zone or minimal settlement zone along the Myanmar border or Bangladesh border, because there is an ecosystem for illegal immigration, just like West Bengal along there. So, and the demography has been made homogeneous artificially. So these can be done on short term. In medium term, you have to drive out the colonial reforms. You have to watch like a hawk the deemed universities that they are not abusing their independence. You have to watch their educational systems. So these have to be done. And in the long term, if you see, in the long term, you have to promote an educational class who has a long vision for Manipur. The political class in Manipur has proven to be highly incompetent and highly corrupt and lacking a lot of vision. And this is one of the major problems. There are lots of disturbing reports coming in that people are burning politicians' houses. People are driving them out. 90% of the politicians are running away from Manipur and not doing their duty at the time of crisis. This lack of accountability is deep rooted upon how this region was governed and how this is done, and this can only be removed at the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much to all the speakers. So these were the questions from my end. I like my uh yeah I'll like to ask my audiences if please come forward, and if you have any question, can you can raise your hand or put your message in the chat box. So I can see Aditi ma'am has raised her hand. Aditi ma'am, please proceed.
I would like to add one point,
Yes, ma'am.
which is also very much necessary. So there has been a false narrative set influencing majority of the Meitei youth and influencing majority of the Meitei population, that Hinduism was imposed on the Manipuris during the time of Raja Garib Nawaz. He was also known as Pamheba or Raja Gopal Singh. So that Hinduism was imposed on the Manipuris during the 18th century, forcefully. This is what most of today's Meiteis they believe. But this is again a false narrative, because Pamheva's immediate ancestor, Khagamba, Raja Khagamba, he built a temple of Vishnu in Yangam, which is still there in Manipur. This temple is also known as the Khagamba Vishnu. And there are also evidences of Pamheva's ancestors uh, constructing temples dedicated to Devi Durga, uh, Shiva, and a pantheon of other Hindu deities. And historical records describe about all the ancestors of Pamheva worshipping and the people of Manipur worshipping a pantheon of Hindu deities. So there is this narrative, this false narrative has to be debunked. And in this book, we have debunked this false narrative with a lot of evidences. And yes, Santadas Adhikari did come to Manipur and he did initiate the Manipuris to Vaishnavism. But you see, in today's times, those who follow ISKCON, they follow a ritualistic worshipping of Krishna and the Dasavatars. But they are already Hindus. They are already Hindus, and they accepted most of the ISKCON devotees. They are already Hindus, and they consider themselves to be ISKCON devotees following a ritualistic set of traditions and worshipping of Krishna and the Dasavatars. Similarly, in Manipur also, the people there have already been worshipping a pantheon of deities. And it was Shantadas Adhikari who first anointed the king to involve into a ritualistic worshipping of Krishna, Ram, and the other Dasavatars. And a majority of the Manipuris then, they took bath in a tank, a sacred tank, that is a kund, and they accepted as the followers of Krishna. And a particular section of the people, they said that they are already worshippers of Vishnu, and they did not agree to take a bath, take a holy bath in the kund. And these people who did not take a bath in the tank, they are known today as Vishnupriya Manipuris. And so they are discriminated. They, in the 18th century, they were discriminated in Manipur because of this very fact, though they belong to the same ancestor. So this narrative that Hinduism was imposed in Manipur in the 18th century during the period of Garib Nawaz is completely false. So there are a lot of evidences. This book, and the first section of this book, the historical perspective, this describes in detail about all of this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, adding some extra insights. So Aditi ma'am, you wanted to ask something.
Namaste everyone. I have a question from all the authors. So the book draws a clear civilizational arc connecting ancient Manipuri traditions to the current identity crisis. So, in your view, how has the erasure or the dilution of the Sanamahi and the pre-Christian traditions contributed to the present day tensions? And what role can the cultural revival play in healing the civil conflict? And how do we frame such conversations in a way that asserting indigenous identity is not dismissed as majoritarian or intolerance of the majority?
So first of all, when we say Sanamahism, again, it is a part of the Sanatana tradition. Sanamahi, as in the first question itself, I have described who Sanamahi was. In the second question, I have described in detail. He was the fifth generation from Arjuna and Chitrangada, and how he came to be worshipped as a household deity. Every Manipuri home used to worship, all the Manipuris, they used to worship him as a household deity, Sanamahi. And the Sanamahism concept came out of, was given birth out of this concept. And it is no different from being a part of the Sanatana identity. And yes, as Vladimir Adityanath has he has already explained how the people of Manipur themselves, they are not aware of their roots. Happen it is there with, in fact, all the people across Bharat, they are not that aware about the, because we have been deprived our history in our textbooks. We do not know about our own warrior ancestors. We do not want to, most of the youth, they do not want to remember the last 1000 years of history, because they, according to them, it is all a history of surrender, of defeats, and all of this ancestors, warrior ancestors across each and every corner of Bharat, they surrendered easily to the invaders. But the true stories of resistance and how over a period of 1300 plus years, the rulers across each and every corner of Bharat, they offered continuous resistance and protected Dharma and the motherland. And that's why, despite our Bharat being looted, plundered, and despite being there being mass genocides in millions, our civilization survived and is still surviving, though there are many civilizations that perished within few decades of invasion. So this is the proof that our ancestors resisted, but this story is not being told in our history books. Besides, every region has a history to tell. Regional history is there. Those regional histories are also not highlighted in the mainstream narratives or in the textbooks. So the regional people are also deprived of their own historical roots. And then we are also deprived of our own chronology. So if we go by the mainstream chronological records, we find 1500 BC as the start of the civilization. And our civilization is considered to be some 1500 to 2000 years old civilization. But there are many historical evidences, including archaeological excavational proofs, that suggest that our civilization is many thousands of years old, say at least 15 to 17,000 years. And these stories are not being told. So what is happening in Manipur is also happening with many other regions across Bharat. Because we are deprived of our historical roots, we do not have knowledge about our own roots. We tend to believe in all of these false narratives and get influenced. And we do not want to go back to our own roots because of this. So that has happened with Sanamahism as well. What most of the Manipuris in Manipur, they consider themselves to be completely different from Hinduism or Sanatana identity, and consider themselves to be hardcore Sanamahism followers. But because they do not know who exactly Sanamahi is, so they are behaving in this way. Once they know their roots, they will start regaining their own identity. This is one bit there. Yeah.
Okay. Any more question, anyone? Ritul?
I would like to add a couple of points if you permit me.
Yes, sir.
Vijay. See, when you are talking about discussions, these stories, what works in a practical sense, what works as students, Aditi ji, what works best is that you promote common cultural and civilizational values. If you look into anything, so-called tribalism, animism, these are differences of interpretation or understanding, often told as totally different faiths. So, if you try to promote the common cultural and civilizational values between, not just, this is not applicable just for Sanamaism, this is applicable for almost all Janajati faiths and Hinduism. If this difference or argument comes, if you start promoting common cultural and civilizational values like, say, ancestral worship, nature worship, belief in manifestation, these things will collapse automatically. So you start the discussion from there. And then you start introducing what Manoshi ji was telling, the facts, so that the conflict or clashes remains minimum. Now, coming to the second point, which you were asking, how do we bring into these questions like Sanamaism, Hinduism, ethnicity, language politics? We have to understand most of these are either done for divide and rule policy by foreign powers or for vote bank politics. So, for effective counter of any of these, decentralized apolitical institutes, particularly students like you, are very important. Like, for example, I'll give you a generic example which is applicable to Manipur as well as the world. Let's imagine there is a caste divide or caste thing. If you want to counter caste narrative, what is the best thing to do? You write actually a proper research paper. First part starts with the dharmic reference, how casta de Judios, the racial component of caste comes. And this same racial component, so-called tribal, non-tribal, you will see, even among Janajatis, you will see this racial component which has been introduced from the West, which was not there. You will see these elements. So while studying. So these things countering basic on the basis of our knowledge. Second will be obviously countering Western narratives and obviously the church and missionary narratives. Third will be actually telling that dividing on the basis of caste or giving reservation or benefits or doing identity politics, did it actually ever benefit anyone other than short economics for a short community? These studies have to be conducted, and these studies have been conducted in Manipur. Let me tell you one thing. One of the least told factors, you know, why there is so much panic among the Manipuris when they have been shifted. Like, let's say there will be a discrepancy. You will say that Manipuris are telling a very small percentage of their population lived in the hills, although I won't say it's a small percentage. It would be More and Churachandpur, Kangpokpi combined, it is well over 60,000. So it's not a small number, but still, compared to total numbers, it's smaller percentage. But still, it's triggered widespread panic. Why? Because in Manipur, a large percentage, around 65 percentage people are living in effectively 6% usable land. So land prices are sky high. And every decade since 1990, the land prices have increased by 100% or 300%. And who have benefited mostly from it, politicians, irrespective of community or irrespective of party. So these narratives have to be countered academically through proper forms of studies. You have to focus on economics and benefit aspect of it. You have to focus on political aspects of it. You have to focus on national security aspect of it. You have to focus on religious aspect of it. It is not possible for one person to do all of it together. But it is possible for institutions like yours to actually write and research such high quality products, which will actually help our nation in the future. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, sir. Any more question? Ritul, you want to say something? Ritul is the one who arranged this talk. So, uh, today's talk has definitely offered a very multidimensional exploration on the ongoing crisis in Manipur by grounding it in both historical and contemporary context. We have seen that from the Mahabharata's contested connections to the intricate dynamics between the Meiteis and the Vishnupriyas. Today's discussion has really illuminated the deep cultural and communal roots of today's unrest. Uh, you speakers have also emphasized how this region's instability is further exacerbated by issues like STAC issues, illegal and decades of insurgency, displacement of ethnic people, exodus, extortion of terrorism, food situation, drugs issues, rise of hatred due to Abrahamic ideologies, problem with academia that provides the civilizational issues very partially, and also put many optimistic directions in which Manipur is going, like what we need to do, like you know, applying effective campaigns and state level education to be improved. Short time policies like effective military operations can be implemented. So ultimately, we can see that there is really an urgent need for historical awareness, empathetic governance, and sustained peace building efforts. So what I have understood. So thank you, three of you. And Best of luck for your book.